Hello and welcome to this edition of Authentic Achievements, where I'm delighted to be joined by the fabulous Grahame Carter. Grahame has got such a wealth of experience. He works for Matchtech. He joined in 2001 as a consultant and has now progressed through to become the UK Managing Director and board member. And he's really passionate about making sure that we support initiatives that encourage and celebrate all aspects of diversity, and embodies Matchtech's commitment to promoting these and the engineering and technology sectors as a career of choice for future generations. And I love that you're really embracing that diversity and inclusion, and particularly in those industries that we know might have struggled perhaps historically to attract people from a diverse background. So Grahame, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's a delight to have you. And when we chatted the other week, it was just such a great conversation. So I'm really looking forward to today. So to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit about you and your journey so far?
Yeah, of course. I'll do my best, and welcome all your listeners. And I hope you find this an interesting debate as we go through this. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Rochford in Essex, and I stayed in Essex for 18 years of my life before coming down to the south coast, the University of Portsmouth. And as you can see from my physique, I did a sports science degree, which has held me in very good stead from Portsmouth University. But when I finished university, I like a lot of people, I wasn't 100% clear on the direction I wanted to go in, and I looked around. I did, as a number of people do, found recruitment as a viable option, and I joined what was at the time a very small organisation on the south coast. And more interestingly, and why I probably am as passionate now, or still as passionate as I was when I joined, that when I started my career here, I actually didn't know what engineering was. I had an understanding of, because of my Amstrad 64K or my friend's BBC computer, what I thought technology was. But I also, over the journey that I've been through, I really realised that I had no understanding back then as well of what actually technology recruitment means, to work for a technology company. So yeah, nearly 22 years ago, I joined a small organisation on the south coast. There were two sister companies, one called Matchtech and one called Matchmaker. And as you can imagine, now, if you had a recruitment business called Matchmaker and you're ringing up people at home from Matchmaker asking to speak to their husband or their wife, it wouldn't have gone down too well. So we changed the name to Matchtech, and incredible journey that we've been on. We floated in 2006 onto the AIM stock market, and we've been on a journey since then with the organisation. So the PLC is actually called Gattaca, and Matchtech is the engineering arm of the business, and Networkers is the technology side of the business. So, and again, as I said, the journey that we started on, and the abilities that I've had and the opportunities I've had to grow up with that organisation have just genuinely been outstanding, and I've been very, very lucky to be a part of it and its success over the years. So I feel very proud of what we've achieved, but also very lucky to have joined at the time that I did within the organisation.
I love it. I mean, what a great journey to have seen them go from being so small to the growth they've got now. And how many people is it now that work with you?
So I was payroll number 18 when I joined.
Yeah.
We had a maximum of around 770 staff across 16 countries. But with the pandemic, where we've, like a lot of organisations, we've just had to streamline. So there's around 550 of us. We work across all of Great Britain, so all across the UK. And we have offices in South Africa, Mexico, Spain, or we call it Iberia, across those regions, and also in America.
Amazing. So it really has evolved and changed so much, hasn't it, from when you started out. And I love the fact that your background in technology is as good as mine. I had an Amstrad too. I still remember that book that you had to try and code everything.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think I've improved.
Indeed.
But what would you say has been the thing you're proudest of in your journey so far?
Well, there's a couple of elements in terms of what I'm proud of. When I look back, when I started, I think you've got to be very, very mindful that it's absolutely fine to say that when I joined, I had a lot of rough edges. I had a very immature but then I was a young recruitment consultant learning my way. So I think firstly, what I am very proud of is the way that I have changed as an individual and what I've learned. And I've been lucky enough to have some outstanding mentors along the way that have really said it's actually okay to look back at the mistakes you've made and highlight those mistakes to others, because then you get that humility and you get that realization and probably a lot of and again, I say this with a degree of hopefully being very humble. I've got a lot of people within the group that would really run through walls for me because we do it together. And it's that probably journey that I've learned and around that communication style, that everybody is different and everybody needs a slightly different Grahame Carter for what brings out the best of those and on their journey. So I'm very, very proud of, I suppose, the progression that I've made. I had a coach, a chap called Mark Norton, who's also on the South Coast, a really quite inspirational individual. But he said to me when we started our sessions, Grahame, you will only get out of this the amount that you are willing to put in and the amount that you're willing to change and adapt. And it really has stuck with me because of the coaching and mentoring I do with some of the staff here. You're only going to get out of it what you're willing to put in and how bare you're willing to lay yourself to really make those improvements. So yes, I'm very proud of that. I'm also, I suppose, to go from a journey, you don't get much tenure with a lot of the work that we do in recruitment is moving people within their careers. But yeah, I mean, to be 21 years starting off as a resourcer and a junior member of staff to now lead this organisation, it's when I say lead it from a sales perspective. I'm very fortunate and also very, very proud of that.
Oh, and you should be, because you've been part of such an amazing journey. And what I love, my nan always used to say, every day's a school day. And it's right, isn't it? If we go into life thinking that we can learn something new every day from every person that we meet, they don't have to be more senior than us. We can learn from everybody. And I love that you've learned to share your vulnerability without losing your credibility, because when you do that, you create a safe space for your people, don't you, to be able to share their vulnerability, and together you're stronger because you're able to help each other. And I think that really comes out in the culture that you've built there, is that piece where you're in it together, and when people feel like that, they will walk through walls for you, or run through walls, because it's that mutual trust. It's not a hierarchy, it's a team. And I think that kind of really comes out in how you talk about the team that you've built there and the way that you work together, which is amazing. You should be really proud. Yeah,
it's interesting as well, because again, as I grew up, I didn't do too much what I would class educational reading, and the reason being is I wasn't that interested in the educational side. But what again those mentoring and coaches have helped me do is you can do a lot of educational reading via leading teams, but you can adapt it to what you're interested in. So I read a number of sporting background books where individuals have gone in and taken what they've learned from the sporting world into a business world. And all of a sudden, of course, it triggered a way for me to learn those leadership skills and abilities. And that's what I've also said to people. It's about finding your learning and what will drive you forward, because some do have an academic learning capability, whereas others have a background. It could be in sport, or it could be in any aspect of life. But there's all literature out there that is linked into those aspects. So yeah, again, that is something that you've got to be very open minded to be able to find what it is that really ticks those boxes, and then you can develop yourself as a leader. And
I love that. That's so true, isn't it? Finding the way that we can take on the learning. I remember one of the first management books I read was actually The Tay of Pooh and The Tea of Piglet, and they'd taken Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, which were two books that I loved as a child, and they'd turned them into management and communication lessons from reading their stories. And I sometimes share that now with people when they're like, oh, I can't read a leadership book, I might read this one. Because actually it's full of great actionable advice, but it's dead easy reading because you're flicking back into little bits of a childhood story. It's so it is, isn't it? It's how do we take that education and find a way that it works for us, so that we don't feel one, that we're forced to do it, that actually we can enjoy it, and two, I think certainly for me, and one of the reasons why we're doing this show and kind of is to share stories with people, so that actually they can take some of the lessons from people who've been there and gone through it, that have had to smooth the edges. You know, we all start out a little bit rough, don't we? But I love a quote, and diamonds were just rocks that did really well under pressure. So that's a great one as well, yeah. So I think, you know, that's where we're kind of hitting, isn't it? Is to say, actually, we'll make mistakes, but it's not the mistake that defines us. It's what we do about the mistake. It's whether or not we own up to it, we acknowledge it, and we learn from it. And we make a brand new and exciting new mistake, but we don't repeat the old ones. And I think that's how we continue to evolve, isn't it? And if we can create that for our people, then they can reach their potential as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, just thinking about that state when you said, you know, sometimes I often say when I'm addressing the new staff that come in, because we do still have a turnover of staff, which is it doesn't keep me up at night because it is a little bit of the industry that we work in, but we do have a staff turnover. I'll say to the new starters when they join, the biggest compliment that you'll ever get from a customer or a candidate, because there are two amongst this, is if they describe you as the non-stereotypical recruitment consultant, write it down, ask them to, you know, give you a testimonial or a statement, and then bring it into to me, and we'll share that success, because that's exactly what we're striving for here. You want to be consultative, you want to lead, and you want to not be that stereotypical recruitment consultant. And we've got an army now of people that are built in that same mould, that really do want to be consultative and slightly different to the customers and the candidates that they work with. So we don't get it right all the time, but that methodology and ethos lives in everything that we do. So yeah,
it's being authentic, isn't it? It's being authentically who we are. And I think I know certainly in my background and career, there was a period where you tried to be like everybody else. Well, it doesn't work, does it? Because you're not like everybody else. We're all different. And at the point that I embraced being who I am and then focusing on what I do, everything became so much easier, because it was like, well, actually, people aren't wondering what doesn't quite fit, because when we're trying to be something we're not. I tried for years to be this well-polished corporate being, and I'm not. I'm like a hyperactive puppy dog most of the time, so it wasn't a good fit for me. And once I embraced the fact that just because I am quite hyperactive and I do like to have fun, doesn't mean to say I can't be serious and do a good job. I can do both. And once you brought that in, you were able to create that space for other people to be authentically them. And I think that's where we really start to grow and develop, isn't it? Because we want to work with people we know, like, and trust, whether that's within our team or whether that's the people that we work with, that, you know, people that we supply services to. And it sounds like that's really what you're pulling together in the ethos of the culture that you've got there.
Yeah. Well, and again, I know when we had a catch up prior to this, and it's really interesting, and it brings us into that cultural element of what we do. You can't fake a culture. You can't have a false culture. You can't tell people what culture you're going to have within an organization. Culture is built and it's lived and breathed on a week, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, and in everything that you do as well. When you're celebrating, when you're delivering bad news, the culture comes from the people and the way that they feel. And I think that's what we did on the South Coast for many, many, many years. You would say to people, you can, there's always life outside of these four walls, and that it's not just one company, although I've been here for my whole career, but you can't create that culture elsewhere because of the dynamics of people that come into it. So we don't talk about it too much. We know that the culture is important, but the culture comes from the individuals and their behavioural skills and the way that they interact with each other. So we're really quite strong on that as well.
Yeah, I love it. And inclusive, and letting people bring their experiences and who they are, and finding a way to make that gel and work together, isn't it? And it's you're right, it is something that lives and breathes and evolves as we go through it. We can't just go, oh look, I've done it now, big tick. That's my culture done. Because it like you say, with every decision, with every change, with every piece of activity that you do, it has an opportunity to either build on or destroy what you previously built as your culture. So although it's not necessarily has to be front of mind, it does have to be thought about, doesn't it, to make sure that you see how that fits.
This is not something I've ever read, or this is almost a Grahame Carter from the heart. But I always say to people as well, if everybody that comes into this office puts everybody else first all of the time, and you think like that all of the time, and so you're always putting someone else before you, we should never, ever have a problem. And that goes from everything from cleaning up the kitchen to making sure you've tidied your desk before you go home, to making sure you say good morning to the cleaning, to every aspect of it. If you always act and put other people first, and everybody does that collectively, we'll have a pretty good place and a pretty good environment to work in. So again, doesn't work all the time, and it certainly isn't a perfect world that we live in or an environment that we work in, but we get it right. Definitely we get it right towards that higher percentage of the time.
And it's about having the right intention, isn't it? It's like, we can have the right intention and we can still get it wrong sometimes, but as long as when we get it wrong, we look at it and go, okay, so it wasn't our intention to do that, but it certainly was our impact. So let's have a little look at that and come back and see how we can align what we actually did with what we were trying to do. And we won't get it wrong all of the time because you've got that purpose, haven't you? You've created that, what it is we're trying to achieve, what it is we want to do is to leave everything and everybody better than we found them. And I think if we can do that, or we can strive for that, because we are perfectly imperfect beings. We will make mistakes. None of us are perfect, but it's about having the right intention, isn't it? And coming back and saying, well, okay, we didn't quite do that the way we wanted to. Let's work out how we can make it better, better today, better tomorrow. So what would you say has been the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
Oh, that's a really good question. Lessons learned along the way. So I'll answer that, if it's okay, in two ways. I think there's we have three dynamics to our business, as I said. So the client facing side is one, the candidate side, and then our internal staff. And again, there's a really interesting article that you can read around Amazon, which basically talks about that to be really successful and driven, you've got to have a primary focus. Now, within an organization like ours, when you talk about a primary focus, very, very difficult, because without the customers, the candidates are no use, and without the candidates, we've got no product to sell to the customer. But if we don't have internal staff, then that whole model doesn't work. So from the lessons learned from a customer perspective, I learned probably just a little bit later than I would have liked in my career that we've got 2 of these and we've got 1 of those, and you do need to practice listening. Listening is a really, really key skill. So I think number 1, when you're dealing with someone who wants to buy from you or the product that you're selling, you've got to obviously put the features and benefits over, but you've got to listen. So lesson number 1, take in as much as you possibly can. Never be afraid to ask more questions so that you can retain more information. I think so. That's definitely number 1, a listening perspective. From a candidate side of things, the absolute is just never overpromise. Never ever. Even if you see a CV or you speak to an individual and you're so confident that you'll be able to do something with them, it's that. It really is. You get yourself in a bit of hot water if you overpromise. So remain calm, continually sell in a professional way, and say we think we've got a good chance, but you've got to be really, really honest and transparent. So it is about. That really is for me being completely and utterly honest with that individual that we're dealing with. And then from a internal perspective, I really do genuinely think the biggest thing that I've done is the lesson I've learned is showing a level of vulnerability, because it's absolutely fine as a leader to say, I'm having a tough time at the moment and I need a little bit of help. And I think when I look back over some of the exceptional leaders that I've worked with, and again, another Grahame Carter line, but that probably will never be published anywhere else, is I've made a career out of surrounding myself with people that are better than me at every aspect of the job that they do. And it's hard to recruit those people because they're very ambitious. But where they are better than me at a large number of the aspects of their job, or if not all of them, it's then the behaviour elements that I work with them. So showing them my vulnerability allows them to know that there's no pressure coming down from me, or that I won't stand in their way if they want to progress and move on. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I can say to leaders and people that are working in organisations, is to do not be afraid every now and again to let a little bit of vulnerability in, because that will help you deliver the bad messages, but it will also really help you when things are going well.
I love it. Such great advice, because I think when we think about it at our base, I believe that all human beings want to be listened to, they want to be understood, and they want to be respected. And you're right, listening is a skill. It is a skill. And unfortunately, too often people listen to interject rather than listen to understand. And if you can suspend this long enough to listen to what they're really saying and ask more questions to understand more, you find the solutions fly in, whether that's your client, whether it's your colleague, whoever it is, because people want to feel that trust and respect. And I think learning as well to share vulnerability is an amazing skill to have, because often leaders daren't share any vulnerability. I remember being told when I started out, under no circumstances show vulnerability, so you just can't do it. I was like, but why? We're creating a space that people can't operate at their optimum in. They're going to be constantly fearful that they're going to get found out or seen to be unperfect. And I remember similar to you actually, I always recruit people that are better than me, because that's how I'm going to learn and grow. And I just have to do my level best to make sure I add value to them in some other way, hopefully by helping them on the skill areas that I can help them with, while they help me on the ones that they're better at. But you're right. I think once we take out that competition, we take out that piece that says you can't be your best because I'm going to stop you being your best, and instead go on, be the best that you can be. I would love to see you fly. And I'm going to be there championing you. It's amazing the impact that has, isn't it, on the people and the relationship. And it's priceless, isn't it, when you see somebody achieve something they didn't think that they could.
I couldn't. Again, we're on a very, very same wavelength. We've seen there has been lots I've kept in contact with so many colleagues that I've worked with to see them go on to do great things and set up organizations and leave the industry and still be successful. And again, if it is all comes down to those communication skills and the ability to, you can leave organizations well. You don't have to do it in a, so again, all around, if you show that little air of vulnerability, you get that little bit of loyalty from everyone within the organization. So yeah, very, very fortunate.
It's like kindness being a superpower, isn't it? Because you're leading your people with kindness. You're thinking about, how do I think about them first? How do I think about clients first? And kindness used to be classed as a weakness rather than actually a strength. Because I think if we consider that, and I often makes me smile when we talk about soft skills, because if they were really so soft, why do people find them so hard?
Yes,
there's so many people out there that actually can't do the soft skills. They can't do the listening or the being kind or sharing that vulnerability. Maybe because nobody's shown them how and nobody's taught them. And clearly you've put the work in to do that self-development, to say, I want to be the best that I can be. And therefore, I need people to tell me when I get in my own way, so that I can learn to stop getting in my own way.
But Kim, there really are some very, very easy techniques around, am I listening well? And that is to have a conversation, and then what we try to do here, and again, we don't do lots of role play, but we do at times we record calls and we tell so that we can listen back to them. But listening well is as simple as, when you finish listening, just repeating back what that individual has said to you to make sure that you've understood it correctly. And I think it's one of those elements where a number of people will say to me, well, how on earth do you learn to listen well? And there are really, really easy techniques to be able to do that. And it is a repeating back of the information you've just listened to. Have you got it in the right context? Have you got it in the right, for exactly what the situation that you're in? And once you've done that, all of a sudden, it's a technique that you find yourself doing naturally because you listen well. And then it isn't something you think about. So,
it becomes a way of life, doesn't it? I mean, when I was doing my coaching training many years ago, I had a supervisory coach. I still have one. And he had this one question he used to make me ask all the time, which is, whenever you're talking, because when you're coaching, you're really just listening and asking better questions. Or at least you should be. It's like, if you're talking, you need to ask yourself, why am I talking? Because I should be listening. I either should be listening or I should be playing back. So I constantly have that going around in the back of my head when I'm talking to people, which is why I'm talking. It really helps me remember what my purpose is and try keeping myself on track with that intention and the impact that you can have as a result if you wander off track, which we can all do, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Grahame, I could literally chat to you all day, but I'm conscious we're getting close to time. So I'm going to ask you one final question. If you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Yeah, if I could give advice to my younger self. So I'll try. I'm going to try and, again, as I have done throughout this, I apologise. I'm going to try and break it down slightly. But rule number one, and again, so I'm going to put this into a business perspective. You've got to learn very, very early on in your career to take your emotional element out of any working environment. And the easiest way for me to describe that is, throughout your career, things aren't always going to go your way, and there's going to be tough situations, and you're going to be in difficult situations. If you hear bad news and you instantly cross your arms and your face screws up, the audience that you're working with or you're involved with know exactly what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and they've made the judgment of how strong they need to be. So definitely my younger self, it took me a very, very long time to take the emotional element of work out of work. And we've talked today all about that vulnerability. It comes back in other areas. But yeah, whatever the scenario we're in, try and remain your consistent self so you can put your argument back or your thoughts back in a constructive way without the client, the candidate, or your internal colleagues knowing how you feel, because I'm very happy, or so that the emotional element of what we do, I think, is really important. I definitely would have said to myself as well at a younger age, don't take yourself too seriously, because at the end of the day, I've been very, very fortunate. I'm a board member of a PLC. I'm very, very lucky. However, I'm a recruitment manager from Essex who grew up on the South Coast. So you've got to remember to always, yes, it's important to people's lives. And number three, what would I do? Enjoy every single element of what you do for as long as you can. And again, I know I've had a couple of them today, but you want to live young for as long as possible. And for me, it is about that. It is about enjoying the success of the people around you, enjoying the work that you do. And I think I've always had that mantra, but if I could have said that to myself as I was coming into the world of industry and business, and probably influence a few more of the customers and the other people at a younger age, I would have definitely done that. Because if you're not enjoying it, then you're doing something wrong.
So true. I mean, I said my nan used to say about every day being a school day. My granddad used to say, live each day as if it's your last, and one day you'll be right. So it really was in that. If this was your last day on earth, is this how you'd want to spend it? And if the answer is no, try and do something different. That it is something that brings you joy, because actually that's what we're here to do. And when we're in a place of joy, then we create a place of joy for the people that are around us, don't we?
We have with the leaders here, we asked them all to do we asked them to do a rolling 3-year business plan. But before they do anything related to the work-related business plan, they have to, at the very, very top of that profile is, what do you want out of this if you achieve that? And it doesn't have to be financial. It could be a 4-day working week. It could be holidays with the family. It could be start a family. It could be university. It could be any number of elements. But over this rolling period, you don't even start to write the business plan until I know what you want out of it as an individual. Because if there's nothing in that box, then what you're doing it for is largely irrelevant. There's got to be something you're aiming for and moving towards. So the leadership team that we have here, very, very much, it is about them and what they want to achieve. And if they know and they're clear in their minds, the rest of the team can get behind, because they'll have the same targets as well. So yeah, it's very important that you get that element right as well when you're growing, that you know what you want out of it.
So true. Thank you so very much. We've learnt loads. I'll make sure that people can get in touch with you. We'll put it all in the show notes. And I look forward to chatting again, Grahame. But thank you for giving us your time and your insight. It's been a joy.
Well, it has been a pleasure, and I hope everyone's found it interesting. Thank you for listening.